Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this session. My name is Vana Raman. I'm a pediatric endocrinologist at the University of Utah and Intermountain in Salt Lake. It is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker. I think most of you do know her. We'll have Nicole Rioles, who will be talking to us about scholarly dissemination from the T1D Exchange QI network. Thank you, Nicole.
Okay, thank you, Vana. So welcome, everybody. Could I have people raise their hands? Who is a member of the publications committee? Right, so this is good because you don't know kind of the day-to-day workings, most of you. So I'm going to be talking about how we've changed our publication dissemination over the last 5 years. And I think you all know we're publishing more and more every year. So this is kind of a story of how we've done that in a very intentional way. So that we can be more productive and share more and reach out to more clinicians who are outside of the collaborative. So I have no disclosures or conflicts of interest. And I'm not going to tell you what the collaborative is. You all are kind of living it, a part of it now. But you know, we're working with interdisciplinary teams, as you know. We really wanted to be clear in improving our impact to increase authorship, not just more publications, but changing who is writing and who is disseminating with us and who has opportunities to publish. So our methods, when we started writing, we were working together, thinking about who's interested in topics and who wanted to write with us. And over time, we've learned that many senior writers were just publishing more and more, which we still want them to do. We wanted to give junior faculty an opportunity to publish with us. So we did more pairing of junior and senior faculty for mentorship so that senior authors could work with first authors who were more junior and to have the opportunity to share their learning. We incorporated patient and parent advisors as authors with us. So they were a part of the writing process and the patient voice is represented. And we used a survey. So we surveyed you many times in the collaborative. And one of the surveys we asked you to complete was your subject interest. And that's our way of kind of indexing and understanding what you're interested, so we can match make writing teams. And as we find opportunities, as first authors come to us with ideas, we can find co-authors and increase the team productivity working together. So we analyzed how many publications we were able to begin writing beginning in 2020. And our survey of this went through October of this year, so October 5, 2022, tracking the types, the impact factor of the journals, and the number of citations for the study period. Has anybody not seen this map? You raise your hand if you've never seen this. So this is good. This is so doing QI now. You all know that this is a process map, right? So we improved our process. This has changed probably 5 or 6 times over the last year and a half. We got many questions, both in the publications committee of what our process was, and also just amongst authors of who's responsible for what, who am I working with, what do I have to do, who's responsible for submitting, when do the approvals or edits happen, who's doing first or second edits. So we intentionally developed this process map to say we can do all of these steps and do them in under 120 days. I think that when we started, we were sometimes going more than 6 months. And it's just, you know, if step goes from A to B and B sits for 4 months, you know, the days keep continuing and it never gets to journal. So we've been able to be more efficient in the process. And when people ask, you know, we always refer back to this. It is kind of a living document. I'm hoping that we continue to improve this process. We may not be able to kind of we may not be able to get to like 60 or 70 days because writing takes some time, research takes time. But if we can publish more and make it more efficient, people appreciate this process. You don't want to be a part of a process where you are not getting outputs or finishing, or you're frustrating kind of with your colleagues because there's not clarity. So we've gotten good feedback from this. And this is cumulative. I don't want you to think that we're publishing 41 papers in a quarter, but this is a really nice trajectory. So we've been able to look at our impact factor of journals we're publishing in, and it's ranging now from 1 to 19. We always want that number to go higher. For the past 6 months, we were saying, you know, can we get into New England Journal? Can we get into JAMA? Can we get more people reading and understanding the work we're doing? So we're getting a little bit more aspirational in those publications. And we've built a few partnerships. So clinical diabetes has been working with us over the last 2 years, pediatric diabetes as well, Journal of Diabetes. And it's been easier to have kind of friendships and partnerships to make the work more efficient. So we're able to publish 8 articles in 2020, 16 in 2021, and 17 in October 22. So obviously the year's not over. We're going to publish more in the next 3 months. So it will be, it's already a higher number from 2021, and that number will continue in 2022 as well. I'm really proud of the fact that more than half of the 41 published articles were first authored by new investigators. And we've made kind of a calculus of new investigators who have published a limited number in their kind of their work history over the last 5 years. And it's a slightly higher percentage, so 56% were from pediatric centers, and that makes sense because I think you all know that we're kind of overbalanced with pediatrics. We're being more intentional about adding more adult centers. I'm hoping in the next 2 years, it'll be more of a 50-50 split as we have more adult clinicians with us. So this is kind of the same trajectory, number of abstracts. So we presented 13 in 2020, 41 in 2021, and 26 in 22 across 7 international conferences. And obviously these are opportunities for us to, you know, visit these conferences and learn with our peers. But really it's an excellent opportunity for your kind of colleagues. And, you know, I've used the term junior faculty, but really these multidisciplinary groups can be, you know, your nurses, your dietitians, your educators, your psychologists, and patients with diabetes, and really the, you know, the whole gamut. We want to have representation to really show the intentional story of what it takes to do QI and take care of patients with diabetes. So for our discussion, we've been, you know, systematically trying to be showing our interventions, showing that practice can happen faster, higher rates of success. And we want to show this in our publications. You know, the network is obviously expanding. You heard the, you know, the slides before of, you know, from 10 to 52 clinics. So we're telling that story of growth, but also growth of the QI work. We do believe that, you know, by publishing the interventions quickly, we can share faster. And it's not just, you know, for the outsiders who don't know us, but, you know, for your colleagues, you know, you may be working in California or Pennsylvania. You may not know what's going on necessarily in all of the teams across the collaborative, but we're publishing together to make that accessible to you. So in conclusion, you know, we've created opportunities for publication. We're supporting both junior and senior faculty, people living with diabetes to co-author with us. We see this as professional development. We get really excited when you tell us, you know, I'm going for associate professor or full professor. I'm putting my applications now. I need a kind of letter of support. I need to show my publications. Some of you have come to us and say, you know, I need to publish more this year. We say, if you have capacity and interest, you know, there's space to write with us. So we want to see your professional development growth and support you in it. And we want the, you know, success of your interventions to be shared. So we acknowledge all of you, the collaborative, the publications committee. I think I saw Sheeta in the room a minute ago. So Sheeta Majidi, back of the room, co-chair of the publications committee, been our leader in this work this year with Shravani Agrawal. And we want to thank the patient advisory committee, who kind of holds us accountable in the language we use and how we think about the care that we're providing and how we're telling that story. And we acknowledge the Helmsley Trust has been very generous in supporting our work. So any questions about any of this? Manu?
So, Nicole, you shared that first slide with the evolution of a manuscript. Do we have anything for a abstract? That may be useful. I don't think we do.
That's a great idea. Yeah, we can do that.
And maybe we could look at, those dates may change. ADA has had technology, whatever meetings, and their submission dates came up potentially, and maybe that timeline, so people, or the meeting may be in, I don't know, June, and their deadline is December, and you kind of in your busy lives, new perspective of that.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. We have been, you may have gotten emails from us, in July that, we want to do an August deadline for scientific session deadline. So we don't want to give you a 2-week notice. We want to give you a 3 or 4 month notice. But we can make it into a process map, and we can make kind of a rolling calendar. Most conferences are happening in the same kind of season. So we know when ISPAD is happening. We know when scientific sessions are happening. Any other questions?
I love that you. How do you get them to
They do, and they've co-authored with us. So Jane Dickinson had a kind of a personal conflict, so she's not with us at the conference today and yesterday. But she has written 3 papers with us, and she's written outside of our work on the use of language and speak about diabetes. But Amy Omar has also published with us, and Jeff Hitchcock. So we invite you to also, as your patients think about being a part of the team and supporting you and being participatory, they are more than welcome to be a part of that. They do not need to be credentialed or have a PhD or a medical doctor degree to publish with us.
Right. Is the family advising member a part of the committee?
They don't have to be, but they can be. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, and I know that okay, thank you. I know we started slightly later. We are going to try to preserve an hour for this.
Okay.
But I'll let you introduce the next person, and you can.
Thank you, Nicole. I also wanted to mention I particularly appreciate, I think, the mentoring opportunity for the junior faculty to be paired with the more senior faculty, and being more intentional about inviting the newer investigators. And so thank you. Okay, next we have Ori, who I think most of you also know. Odugbesan will be talking to us about building capacity for quality improvement among the T1D exchange QI coordinators. Thank you, Ori.
Hi, everyone. If you're a QI champion here, can I just see your hand up? Good. So you probably know the story. And then if you're here and you're a new site, you don't have a QI coordinator, can I? Good, because we still have about 10 centers that, haven't identified their QI coordinator yet. So I'll go over how, we've grown the QI capacity of our coordinators and how we're supporting them. Again, we are all part of the exchange. We don't have to talk about this, but the exciting thing for us is the fact that we now have 52 centers, we've grown. And because we've grown, we know that QI coordinators are at different levels in their capacity. So we really wanted to meet QI coordinators where they are. So for centers that are yet to identify their QI coordinators, we want you to know that we have resources to help them. For centers that already have their QI coordinators, we're still here to help them. So we kind of approached this in 4 broad areas. We thought about how do we build the QI capacity. So the 4 main areas are QI coaching, QI committee, the online learning platform, and the QI data sharing. And the aim of this was really to understand the perspective of QI coordinators on the resources that we provided, and how they felt about the resources, how useful it was in building their QI capacity. And we also wanted to know if the duration of participation in the collaborative contributed to QI capacity building. So these are the resources that, we provide to QI coordinators. The bi-monthly coaching calls for new sites, the quarterly calls for older sites, the collaborative calls for both the adult and the pediatric centers, the IHI Open School, the QI portal, a lot of QI templates, the PDSA templates, the process map templates, fishbone templates, KDD templates, and the Rails, the live QI tool for documenting QI projects, and the quarterly dashboards. So for the methodology of this, we designed a survey using Qualtrics, and the questions were multiple choice, open-ended questions as well. And the survey was administered to 40 QI coordinators. And we got about 85% response rate. So 34 out of the 40, filled out the questionnaire, the survey. Out of this, 79% of them were pediatric centers, 21% were adult centers. And it was interesting that all of them, 100% of them found the templates useful, the PDSA templates, the process map templates, like the templates that we share with sites. 96% of the respondents also agreed that their QI knowledge has increased since joining the collaborative. 95% of respondents have been part of the collaborative for more than 2 years. And 96% of them agreed that there's been increased knowledge since joining. And you can see the chart for collaborative calls. 96% of them found it useful in building their capacity. For the worksheet, 93% of them, the QI checking calls, the QI Champions Committee, about more than 80% of them found that useful. So we thought that, this is really consistent with what was seen in the literature, that online learning platform is really helpful to build QI capacity. It helps to reduce the time, you have to spend in sites, because most of those learnings are, online, and you can plan your time. And then it's also easier for QI coaches, and the curriculum is also really solid, and it can help with different levels of QI capacity. So for people that are new to QI, there are courses that they can take. And then for people that are like super into QI, there are also courses that they can take. Studies have also shown that being integrated into external collaborative is helpful in building capacity. And this is also consistent with what we found, in the collaborative. And I just wanted to also mention that, from the chart, you saw that about 64% of people were like, well, the QI, the dashboards help. So we really want to encourage QI coordinators to really think about data as an important piece of QI, and that really looking at the data is super important to building QI capacity. So we want you to know that the approach, the T1D exchange right now, the approach is feasible, it's working, and we'll continue to try to provide more resources to help with building QI capacity. And it's also important for us to think about funding. And that's why for some of the centers, we have special projects, because we know that funding and engaging leadership is super important in building QI capacity. And we found it in centers that have their PIs super engaged in the QI efforts. They're usually more successful than centers that are, not as, that the PIs or like the leadership of the clinic is not as engaged in QI. And we just want to thank all QI coordinators, because they've made us to learn. We've learned, from the QI Champions Committee, and we also want to thank the Hemsley Charitable Fund for always supporting the collaborative. Any questions? Lisa?
Now that there's a lot of QI coordinators that best practice for teaching that you build QI coordinators look successful at that work. That would be great to hear. And then, I mean, this is 52 sites now. So is there someone helping you? Like, are you maybe so you guys have the bi-monthly meetings. So there's tremendous happening from those that are collaborative.
All right, so I'll take the second question first. So we have about 4 QI coaches right now. So there's more help, and the first question about best practices, like I mentioned, the IHI Open School is something that we know that has helped our centers. We've heard back from QI coordinators that it's super helpful. And I've also seen it personally. I've seen QI coordinators that joined the collaborative saying, oh, Ori, I've never done QI. This QI thing is new to me. It's so but after taking the IHI Open School, and for those kind of people, we just recommend the basic training. There's the QI 101 to QI 105 that, they take and just kind of gives them an idea of the language, the PDSA, because some of this language is really new to people that are starting for the first time, but, the run charts and all of that. And after a while, a lot of them just feel more comfortable. So that's something that I know that is super helpful. And just the dashboards that we share with site has also been, helpful, because a lot of new people to QI, and even people that are not some people don't want to do those dashboards. It takes a long time, but just sharing that with them is also, I think, is also helpful to see how you're doing with the measures that we're tracking. So I think those two, and the QI Champions Committee for sure. I think that's a group that we have about 40 active members, and with the additional centers that have joined the collaborative, I think that group is going to get even bigger, and there's so much sharing that goes on in that group, and they can email each other. And in that group, we also have QI, Blake, what do we call them? The Q, I'm losing my touch, but the champions, that's Dawn and Ashley. So we have them within the group that other folks can reach out to.
So if there's no questions, I'm going to use this as a plug for the T1D team. I think they've been phenomenal since 2016 in getting all of us on the rails for getting to where we are today. I mean, they're available 24/7, literally. And if you're lucky, you'll get their cell phone too. But again, I think all of us are busy in our what we do daily, whether we're a physician or a nurse, or and not every place is inherently have a QI person. And I think the most important thing I've seen is the QI coordinator's role in making their site successful, I'm going to say. And that's where she's saying that QI committee or the QI coaching is very important. There's so much more sharing that goes at that level than at our provider PI level. I think they take on all that. So I think we give them direction, we work with them. But that identification of that person and education is very, very important for your success. And the second thing you mentioned, I want to highlight that too. The buy-in from nursing, whatever definition of nursing in your institution, is very important. As a provider, I can't succeed if my nursing leader doesn't buy into what we want to do in clinic, because they decide what's done in clinic with their staff, nursing, diabetes educators, whatever. So I think it is very important to engage them and get their buy-in for leading anything successful.
Yeah. Thank you, Manu. And I'll just plug that in as well, that some centers really make it so easy for us, and Nationwide Children is one of those, because leadership is super engaged. So thank you, Manu.
Ori, Laura Barbara says she's new to T1D Exchange Collaborator. She asked, can you define what the difference between QI coordinator and PI or QI?
Good. So the PI is the MD, that's the principal investigator on the team, but the QI coordinator is the same person as the QI champion. We just use that word interchangeably, but that's the person that supports the work. That's really make sure that the QI project is running and all of that. Sometimes they are nurses, sometimes they are research coordinators, sometimes research assistants, dietitians. It really depends on who on the team is interested in QI and is in the clinic.
So corollary to that, or when you did the survey, Was it a breakdown in the responses wherein maybe RNs or CDs felt the need for, was it a breakdown in their answers at all based on their background?
So we didn't ask, if there were nurses or research assistants. So that's a good point. Maybe, next year with more numbers, we'll be able to do that and ask who's a nurse, who's a research coordinator, social worker.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Ori. Hey, should I just go to the next slide? There we go. Okay, next we have Anton Wirsch. I think most of you know him as well, who will be talking about review of common errors during EMR data mapping and transformation to the T1D Exchange QI data specification. Thank you, Anton.
So, Anton Wirsch, data integration manager. I work mostly, I manage part of our cloud infrastructure. I also look at, sites that are starting data onboarding process. So, when a cloud, it's a little bit of background, when a center joins the collaborative, they promise two things. One, that they're going to work on QI with Orion team. And then second is that they're going to eventually provide us data at a regular interval. And to get to that point where they can provide us data regularly, they have to go through this process on the bottom, 5 stages. And today we're focusing on the data mapping portion, which is usually the most time-consuming portion. And that's where they have to take, their EMR system and look at our spec and try and, how do they match up? And so, our data specifications, we have, I'm sure many of you are familiar with them, but we have the core portion, which is very generic information, but there's 6 sections. There's patient information, patient providers, encounters, observations, conditions, and medications. And then we have the other half, which is very diabetes focused, and that has like disease information, insulin monitoring, and glucose. And so in this data mapping process, what happens is one of your analysts will start extracting data. So we'll start with the patients, and then they'll extract some patient file, and then they'll send it to me. And then I'll review it and they'll say, well, these things right here needs to be fixed. And I'll send that feedback back. And then they'll send another version. And then I'll find 1 or 2 more. And then we'll keep iterating until we've knocked them all out. And then we go to the next file. Then we'll go on to providers. And then we repeat 7 times until we get through all 6 files on the core. And then diabetes is kind of considered as one big file. And then, I review all of these files. And then once we get through all 7 files, then we get a historical data set, and I'll review that as well. Now, I kind of focus more on the adherence to the data specifications. After this process is data validation. That's more about data accuracy, but I do look at a little bit of data accuracy. So in our data specifications, we have a number of different types of data fields. So we have, one is dates. So any type of date fields, it's always in the same type of format. It's year, month, date, no hyphens, no slashes, nothing, just numbers. And then we have coded or categorical. So these are like a set of valid values that are supposed to be chosen from. So like, for example, like gender, it should either be male or female, and we have a category in our observations. So it should be either surveys, vital signs, labs, or social history. And then we have like industry standard coding systems like ICD-10s and SNOMED and CPT codes. We expect those values to be valid. And then lastly, we have like numerical values for like A1Cs, we're expecting a percentage. And then like DKA counts, they should be also a number. So what I did was I looked at most recent 11 sites that have, or centers that have completed that data mapping phase. And that turned out to be like 148 data sets. So that could either be 1 file or it could be 7 files. I went through all of them and started like categorizing, what kind of buckets are going to be generated of all the errors that I see. And it turned out to be 10 plus like everything else. And you look at these, some of these might sound mundane, but on our back end, we have an automated system. So we kind of require things to be in certain formats so that everything just works. And so first is like file names. When a file is sent to us, we expect it to be in a particular format. File name format, and then inside the file, it's kind of like a CSV file, but we use a different delimiter. But it needs to be properly delimited. Dates, as I mentioned, should be in the proper format. We'll get hyphens and slashes all the time. That file should have the proper headers in it. Another thing is about case. So like most of our specifications is lowercase. There's a few exceptions where there's uppercase, but sometimes we'll get case mixes. We'll have missing columns sometimes. But then we get to the meat of things where, sometimes values are not incorrect. We'll get A1C values of like 300. There's the set of valid values and it's not one of them, or it's not in the proper case, it's not orphan. This last one is orphans, where, we'll have a reference to a patient in an encounter or observation. We'll have a lab for them, but they're not in the patient file, so we don't know anything about this patient. So before I go into some of those errors, I just kind of want to show you just a little bit of, what I've saw during this for these 11 sites. First of all, how many data submissions did it take for them to get through all 7 files? It ranged from 9 to 17 attempts, and then days, and these are calendar days, includes weekends, holidays, everything. So it went from 124 days all the way to 521 days. Now, obviously, they're not working on this every day. Sometimes, at the end of the year, many sites get, they're kind of focused on US News and World Report, so we kind of get pushed back. But this is what we see. Now, going back to some of those errors. So we have like value case, value coded, and value incorrect. So all 11 sites had an issue with this. The distributions were different. Then on the right, I looked at like sections. What sections is causing a lot of the issues? And we find like encounters, observations, and patient. All sites had an issue with this. And I was surprised. It might be the patient file is actually not that difficult, but it's the first one that we do, and so that's where get your learning curve at. Since we hit the diabetes last, that one has the least issues. So this is just like an example of one of them. So this is valid case where like the case, sometimes it's not in, it has uppercase, lowercase. And you can see that, one site in particular had this issue over and over and over. So the distribution is different, and it's the distribution. I haven't looked at the distribution for all 11 of them, but I suspect that, one site, each site has their own little particular error that they tend to have the issue with. So as I mentioned, distribution is something that we're seeing. It's different for each site. We want to. This is more for like analysts. We want to share like these are the top 10 things that we see errors in, and so you want to be aware of it so that we'll have those issues or it might be lower them. We also see that this is an opportunity. We see the analysts and the PIs, they start working together and they'll identify sometimes that there's some data issues. There's some corruptions in the data. I saw some of that a little bit. So in conclusion, that we have identified like these 11 buckets. We're trying to, we want to implement some QI here and try a few things to see, what we can do to, reduce the number of errors in hopes to shorten the time it takes to do data validation. So we've come up with a number of checks that we're going to tell them, these are the things that we're going to check for, what I check for. And so we're going to give that front so that they can run their own checks before they even send it to me. So that's it. Any questions? Sure. So it varies. when there is, this is where Anne helps out a lot, she'll help, so she'll set up regular calls for us. So like every 2 weeks, we'll have a call with the analyst and with the PI. PI doesn't always have to be there, but when we have those regular calls, it keeps it on the radar. And so that helps. Another thing is if the analysts, we've seen some, if they're familiar with the data, that helps as well. And if they've done multiple of these extracts, what's another one? That's not what I can think of right now. Sure, right here.
That is the case. Do you have, are there fields that we submitted about data or is it central?
Okay, so the question was regarding legal issues regarding sending data. So our data, what we request is what's called a limited data set. So the PHI that we collect are full dates, so birth dates, any kind of dates, has all dates, and then 5-digit zip code. We do not want to receive MRNs. We don't want to receive their names. We don't receive their street addresses. We don't want anything. So that helps. So that's another thing when we start here in the data mapping prep portion, this is where we give them all the information. We say, please send this to your governance group. That can take a lot of time right there for them to say, yeah, it's okay. Sure, right.
Implemented a warehouse and they were considered for research, it was a dry conclusion. And that was a major part for us. What do we tell these?
This is also, we get this a lot because this data that we're using is used for two purposes. One is for the QI portal, and then the other is generic, is patient population. And so if one of you are interested in doing some kind of study, you can come to us and say, hey, what's the data look like for this and that, And so there's 2 points. I don't know, and Nicole. Yeah.
So we are your business associate, so we're providing a service. You get service in getting QI coaching, using the data as a tool, having the portal. So this really is QI. So it should be the story of you're doing intentional process improvement. And it is just technically not research. We're publishing on the work, so we're doing the work in the research of QI. But the work is really about improving your processes. So it should be sold as an improvement in a tool. Yeah. And Carol, I'll let Anton do the second.
Oh,
Yeah, thanks so much. So 2 different points. First, a comment and then a question. For like going through this process, it took a lot of work from philosophy for us to get it through our legal team too, but we kept iteratively explaining to them exactly what this was, and they did finally buy it. Professor Nicole over a year kept it approved. And that was an embarrassment to me, but it wasn't in the pandemic. The second one is totally different. It helped with the people internally in the institution. Only to say that. As Anna knows, we hit this weird roadblock where they said that only 10% of our patients under mapping were like on pumps and 15% were on CGM, which we have our own internal data that clearly shows that incorrect.
Right.
What might, and we're going to have follow-up calls, but what pieces may they be missing or we may be missing to forward to them, and what other ways can we pull this through that?
So I'm a little bit at a disadvantage because we are not a clinic, so I'm not able to run Epic or any EMR systems. But from what I've kind of gathered, some data is over here, some data is over here. Well, that's a satellite clinic. That data's over there, and it's in this format. And so, I have a sense that some of the data is not all of it being collected because the analyst knows for this clinic it's here, but they might not know about.
But where are you collecting? I literally on my medication. It was like scary. So we're just, this may be something that has us as sites resolve these issues, we can share with other sites how we actually got this done to actually get the data that we know is accurate. And I mean, once we figure ours out, I'll be happy to share that with the other sites.
Yeah, we'll,
Do that,
yeah.
pull your data, and some of
Yeah.
the also really that your institution has,
Mhm.
sometimes some are better
Mhm.
than others, but this is a huge, area that we're trying to resolve.
Yes, and that reminds me about another thing about making the data mapping process quicker. We are now kind of partnering with a company called Tegria. They used to be known as Blue Tree. There are ex-Epic employees, and so they know the system, and so, but they got bought out by Tegria, so now they also have some Cerner capabilities as well, and so so they're able to map, relatively quickly, in 2 months, 3 months.
And you have to out the 124. Does anybody want to know the 124-day clinic? Can you name that clinic?
It's de-identified.
What? Sometimes name the top just so you know who is.
No, Next question. Oh, so our data specification altogether, like if you added up all the variables, it includes like 120 variables that we're asking for. But we don't, no site is providing 120 variables.
About, the data. So once your data map, you,
Yes.
how do you, like,
Yes, so we're trying to limit the number of updates to at most twice a year. Was it once a year? Yeah, and most of that would, obviously we'll have any type of new devices will come on. We'll put So we realize that that there are IT resource constraints, and so that's why we're trying to limit them. And when they are changes, they're not drastic changes, they're just small changes. And, we hope that, that somehow, eventually that they'll get, you'll have your turn to be able to, for the IT services to work on them. That's something we do struggle with, each center has how their IT resources are allocated it's quite different.
Thank you, Anton.
Yes, it's Anne's turn.
Quick question.
Oh.
There's got to be so many nuances with each site and all the systems that people are using, Epic versus PowerChart, and even within each. It took us a year as well to get, everything approved through our legal system and whatnot. Are there things that sites can start doing in that time frame? Common errors to avoid in your template, and that we could have incorporated in that time.
Well, as I mentioned, there's the more like the governance part, getting that set up, and then there's some getting set up for the file transfer that can also take a lot. There's a lot of red tape with that, and we can. I mentioned that there's the number of checks that we check for. We're starting to send those. I don't know if there's a lot of.
So Anna's going to come in,
Sure.
and slides are going to come up. We're going to have just about 11 minutes so that we can all go out for a group photo up there. So Anne is going to be speedy, but I'll let you.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, next we have Anne Mungmode. I think you all know her as well. She's a program manager, and she'll talk to us about user value and comparisons between data mapped and non-mapped portal users. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Really happy to be here in person, meet so many of you. The energy is very infectious. I'm really enjoying it. So I look forward to sharing this with you. Thanks to Dr. Skierdo, Dr. Naiman, and Don and Julie for supporting this particular presentation on the portal. If you know me, I talk a lot about the portal. I like to talk about other things too, but we'll just really quick share, the extensive process that Anton just described. To become data mapped, we recognize that that's quite a journey. And in the QI portal right now, you can have access to certain features if you're not mapped, and we want you to take advantage of those in the meantime while your center is getting data mapped. So I'll just share a little bit about what that difference looks like in your case use. And then we've analyzed a little bit of trends about how those differences look if you're mapped versus not mapped for some of those common features. If I have time, I may share some of the things that we updated for this year and what we have planned for the next year, but we'll see as time goes on this morning. The QI portal is a great tool. We're excited to share it with you for benchmarking, for sharing best practices. And then of course, once you're mapped, digging into your data, analyzing those charts. Ori shared her nice, 74% of those QI coordinators agreed that that portal was valuable as a resource to them. I'm a grade A student. I want that to be, 90, 95. So if you're one of those that you want to be using the portal more and you have questions on that, let me know. Or if you know others in your center, I can join a call, let me know. We're happy to talk about that. We do have a paper that came out this year about the portal, about the journey in creating it, about what those current features are. That information is here. I think several of the co-authors are here in this room now, so thank you for supporting that. If you're interested in more of that, I'm going to skip the timeline a little bit. The portal's evolved over time quite a bit, but where we are today is we have 4 different tabs: dashboard, compare, report, and library. And this is where we can really see the difference in, if you're not mapped quite yet, you do have access to the compare features. If you haven't seen that yet, that's this kind of feature here. You can still go in and see for the sites that are mapped what their trends look like over time and some of their outcomes. So you may have, internal reports. You have a sense of where your clinic lies. We want you to take advantage of that cross-clinic comparison as part of this 50+ network, and begin making those comparisons. Feel free to see who those folks are, reach out to them, connect with them, ask one of us to connect to you. We're happy to do that. And you also have access to the library. So we now have over 100 resources available in the library, and that ranges from case studies, our change packages, some of our QI templates that Ori was describing are in there, as well as other external examples related to the kind of key measures that we're really interested in. And then of course, the dashboard and the report where you get to see your clinic data and run some, develop some charts, get a sense of where your center is performing. We look forward to getting all of you there where you have all access to all of those features as well. Anton described this process already. And Anton, right, you're giving out your phone number and your mailing address, and for other questions on that. We appreciate, we know this is a journey. Wherever I can help in that, please let me know. For this particular analysis, so like I said, we're looking at data mapped users versus non-mapped users. This was over a period of time, about a year, November 2021 through October. So I was just wrapping up this analysis last week. We were looking specifically at users that returned to the portal after their first time. We know that when you create your account, first time you log in, you might just be poking around, what is this? How do I navigate? So for this, I wanted to capture kind of true returning users, so folks that might be coming back, maybe searching for something specific. And I can share some of those results here. So in the blue, we have our data mapped users who have access to each one of those 4 tabs, and then our non-mapped users with the compare and library. So we have the percentage of users as the bar. As users logged in, we just tracked which of these tabs are folks logging into. So this is information that we get in the back end through Google Analytics. As well as the dotted line shows us for data mapped users, on average, how much time are you spending in each tab? So overall, data mapped users are, they're touching each one of those 4 tabs. Data mapped and non-data mapped users are using compare tab at relatively the same rate, which I'm really happy to see. We want you to take advantage of that. This is a learning network, grow and learn from each other, and shamelessly look at other people's trends and ask questions about how you can get to where they are or learn from them. And then non-mapped users, you're logging into the library more frequently than our data map. So thank you for doing that. Feel free to poke them about some of the resources you're finding in there and some of the things that we would like them to see. On average, we're seeing folks are spending anywhere from 12 to a little over 30 minutes in each tab, depending on what the tab is. So in the library, people seem to be spending a little more time, about half an hour. And I'm guessing that's because we're opening up articles, doing some reading. Versus things like the dashboard tab, which just gives you a nice clear snapshot. So that makes sense to us. Checking time. Okay, so some of the updates that we did in the portal this year, if you're not aware, again, I want everyone to take advantage of these. is that we're trying to, and one of the areas that I'm hoping to support with the portal is to make it as user-friendly as possible. So when you log in, it's nice and intuitive. It doesn't need an explanation. And if you have any feedback on that, please, that's an open invite for that. So we have new to this year notification bell. When you log in, it'll give you notification of any new features, if there's new data for your site, or anything else that might be of interest. And then we also have a new frequently asked questions page, as well as the demo video. So we're developing those resources to support, I would love to be in all your meetings. In case I'm not available, we have some resources to support your use and do that. We're also looking to expand the ways that you can use the data in the portal. So expanding our health equity features. Now you can disaggregate the data by different health equity measures. So by race, ethnicity, gender, language, and insurance. And take a look at your data through that lens, where this is something that the collaborative is embracing and growing. This is really important to us. We want to know that as we're improving outcomes, we're improving them for everybody. And then we did add 2 new metrics this year, so time and range and social determinants of health for sites that are able to collect that. We're happy to share that. We had some updates to the library as well. So you can tag other users. If you see an article you want a team member to look at, or maybe connected with somebody here today and said, oh, I love talking to so-and-so about that, and you want to continue the conversation there, you can do that. We also added categories to the library to make it a little easier to see. We know as we grow and add more adults to the collaborative, we have resources that may be highlighting adult specific examples. So we want to make that really clear and direct you to find those. I already mentioned that we have over 100 resources, so we're happy. And Holly does a lot of that upload. Thank you, Holly, for keeping that up to date. So for next year, we have some things in mind. We're adding some more metric filters, so you can be able to filter by BMI, type of visit, and years with type 1 diabetes, if we have that information. And Ori, when she was up here, she also mentioned that Life QI is one of the resources available to QI coordinators. We know that that's an additional site we're asking folks to log into. What we're working on now that we will have ready in 2023 is to have a 5th tab in the QI portal called Improve, where you'll be able to document your QI projects. You'll be able to compare that to the data for that project, whatever related measure that is. You can see other people's projects. So we're going to put that all in one place for you, and hope that bridges the connection between what you're seeing in the data and the hard work and the actual, activities and tests of change that you're putting in. We want to make that connection really clear, so you can tell that story to your leadership about what we tried, what happened, and what we're seeing in the data. So look forward to that. Hopefully next year. That's in the works. And really appreciative of everyone involved. We are doing our own kind of QI project with the QI portal, and several of you have been pinged here and there for little questions, or, we tried this test of change, it didn't work, tell us more about why. We're very open to feedback. We ask users to give us information. We feature users in the newsletter. So we just had our folks from Seattle featured in the last newsletter. Thanks for sharing with us. And you don't need that invite. If I don't come to you for that, please just feel free to ask me those questions anytime. Happy to receive and hear more ideas for what we would like to see from the portal in the future. Thank you. I'll take questions.
And is it possible to have more than one on the line? My understanding is.
Yeah, that's right. And we have limited licenses. So I believe that's still the case. So that's one reason also why we want to move to the QI portal, so all members of your team can have access to that and be able to see and contribute to that project. Yeah, but if we can talk more offline about that too, if there's a specific request for that. Yeah. Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we should head towards pictures, just outside.
Outside, you just go right around.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
And just one more fun.
Oh,
Dr. Golden, for those of us who are waiting on confirmation of nothing, how will we know when we can? Oh, great question.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Golden. I'm glad you're here with us virtually. So the question is, for those waiting, how will we know when our data is available? As Anton mentioned, we also go through a data validation process. So we look to make sure that data looks accurate. Once we do that with your team, we do that internally as well. if all looks good, I send a nice big gigantic email that says, welcome to the full portal, tag all your members. So that'll be really clear and obvious. Dr. Golden, I look forward to sending that email to your team very soon.